Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Watching the Boxes Fantasy Basketball Podcast, hosted by #basketball.com, your home for the very best fantasy basketball tools and expertise on the entire internet. Go check them out, #basketball.com. I am your host, Mike Catron, and joining me, as always, is my co-host, Tyler Watts. What's up, Tyler?
Oh, Michael, how are you this fine day?
I'm doing pretty good. It's the weather is finally it's beautiful out. It's warm. You don't have to wear a sweatshirt outside. It's probably never gonna come back. It's gonna be the hottest summer on record, and we're all gonna melt into the ground, and that will be the end of humanity.
Well, that's a very bleak way to start this. I was hoping for something better, but I guess I'll have to take it now.
No, it's all gonna be bleak for me this year. That's a promise to all the listeners out there. I will be as bleak as humanly possible. That'll probably get people to listen, right?
Sure. I mean, I guess maybe we could be the #1 downloaded podcast on the I don't know what network.
Like the goth. We could switch to the goth network is goth fantasy basketball hour.
The Debbie Downer hour. Sure. I mean, great.
Are there goths anymore? Are there goth kids anymore? I don't know. I haven't been a kid in a long time.
This is a question you're going to have to ask someone who may be a child. Can we get a child on the podcast? Is anyone willing to put their child on the podcast?
Listen, if there are any goths out there or parents of goths, tweet at us at Tyler P. Watts at Watch the Boxes. I'm just curious if that subgenre of clique, high school clique, still exists. I'm curious. I wonder if that's gone the way of the travel agent. Got replaced by the internet.
Gone the way of the travel agent. I liked how you went with the travel agent. I'm a fan.
There's no fucking travel agents. You can book a flight online and you can get all your angst out before you leave the house on the internet. The internet's taking care of both of those things. So I'd just like to know if the goths still exist. But speaking of bleak, Tyler, this is going to be a bleak show, apparently. Kevin Durant in the, what was that, Game 5? Game 4?
Game 5, my friend.
Game 5. That's right. Game 5. Comes back after all the criticism on NBA Twitter. And you know what? I blame NBA Twitter for all this. NBA Twitter has been absolute nonsense. Really off the rails this NBA playoff season. The narrative on legitimately every player has changed over 48-hour periods. Steph's great, Steph's terrible, Steph's great, but still terrible. All those is they don't need KD. They really need KD. It's the worst thing that ever happened to KD. It's the best thing that ever happened to KD. All this nonsense, and KD comes back, plays in Game 5, hurt. And it looks like, actually, I think we know by now, he's torn his Achilles, and he has undergone surgery, a devastating injury for anyone who plays the game of basketball. Not a very good track record for people coming back from Achilles injuries.
Yeah, and so obviously we saw this already this season with JJ Barea, and we've seen a few of them in recent years. DeMarcus Cousins, right, last year, and all reports are they're actually getting better. Right, there was a time in the 70s and 80s where if you tore your Achilles, basically your career was over.
Yes.
So things are getting better. If we want to talk the fantasy angle of Durant's injury, that is probably a no-go next year in the sense that, I mentioned, right, JJ Barea torn. I've been doing a lot of research on Achilles tears, trying to figure out where he's going to be, what he's going to look like coming back next season for my other job. So basically the fastest person to ever come back from an Achilles injury is Wes Matthews. He tore his ACL in March 2015, and then he came back and played on opening night the next season.
And that's pretty much, pretty close to unheard of. I think Kobe Bryant came back probably a little bit later than Wes Matthews did. But
And
Matthews
Rudy
kind
Gay,
of a lunatic. Like the
Rudy
fact that he
Gay
came back
was
that quick.
kind of also in there. His was like 8 months after he tore it. He came back and played.
Yeah, but all those guys definitely lesser of a player. Some of them taking huge hits, huge falls
Well,
in
and
their production.
especially that first year, because so you're allowed to shoot and do a lot of things during your rehab, but you're not allowed to like take a full jumper. You're not allowed to jump up in the air and put all your weight back down on that leg. So we've seen particularly the 3-point shooting of all those players in the first season at least take a massive hit.
Yeah, it's true. All of those players take a long time to get back in, and I'm guessing the average I guess time away is going to be almost a year.
The average return is like just under 11 months.
Yeah, about a year. So we're looking at what, March, April, at very, very best March and April. So the next season is shot for Kevin Durant.
If he could do the Wes Matthews, right? Wes Matthews returned in 7 months.
Yeah, so, I just don't think it's gonna happen.
So, but at this point, right? So, like, okay, let's just play this scenario out. That would make him return in January, right? Now that's the absolute top scenario.
Well, I guess it's semi-similar to what happened with Boogie.
Right. So if you're heading into your draft next season and you're going, well, at the absolute best case, I could get this guy from January to whenever your season ends, right? Probably somewhere March, maybe the first 2 weeks in April if you play the entire season out. Like, sure, Kevin Durant is, we talk about it all the time, maybe one of the more underrated players in fantasy and, is always deserving of being in that top tier. But, to even want to pick that guy, especially in a head-to-head league, like, if the playoffs start at the beginning of March, you're going to get 1 month of production out of him.
Yeah.
At best.
If you're in a redraft league, I just say it's a no-go. I think if you're in a longer team league, a keeper league, maybe now's the time to kind of make if you need to take a risk in order to be better, go ahead and take that risk. If KD can be a good keeper based on your keeper values, your keeper penalties, rules, etc. Someone who had KD was hoping to fight for a championship. Now they're not going to take advantage of that. Get KD on your team, hold him in your IR trade. Buy low, sell high. And you could buy low on KD right now if you're in one of those longer term keeper leagues. But if you're playing a redraft league, it's over for KD, and that's real sad because KD, quite frankly, could have been the best player in fantasy basketball. We said this in our last podcast when we were talking about our top 60. We started out with the top 15, and KD was one of our few picks that had the potential to be the number one overall fantasy basketball player next year.
And I'll put it on record as saying I don't think he plays a game.
I don't either.
2019-2020 season. I don't
Do you think he signs a max contract?
Yes, 100%.
He's going to sign a max contract without the ability to play next year.
So here's kind of what his options are. I mean, if people are interested in this, and I'm sure you can get this from plenty of outlets, but he has a $31.5 million player option with the Warriors. So he could obviously opt in and play. They have that next season, right? Or he can opt out of that and be a complete free agent, right? His starting salary on a max contract would be $38.5 million.
It's pretty good.
So he gets $7 extra million by opting out. So he's going to opt out. I think he will get some long and some short-term max contract offers. Like, if you're a team like the Knicks, all right, and you struck out on Kyrie Irving, and you struck out on the plethora of other all-stars who are going to be free agents this summer, and Kevin Durant's the last one sitting there, and he says, okay, I'll come to New York and play, but I'm only going to do it on a 2-year deal, but it's got to be for the max. Isn't New York going to do that? Pay him pay him 70, whatever it is, 74 million to get one season. I could see it happening.
It might be a little unfair to use New York as your guinea pig for this, considering New York is, well, known for making really boneheaded moves throughout the last X amount of decades.
Well, and I mean, you saw the points. I mean, people have been making it, right. Like, he's been a player who's been worth way more than the max, right? Like, he's a top player in the NBA. He might be the absolute best player in the NBA right now. So, to offer him a 4-year max, any of those teams with cap space, knowing that basically you're only going to get 3 years of production out of that. And even if we see him, the Achilles injury affect him a lot, I mean, he's still probably a top 60 player.
Oh, 80% of KD is better than a top 60 player.
That's what I'm saying. So, you know what I mean? So I don't see why some of these teams like Brooklyn and those guys won't be willing to just go, yeah, man, here's a 4-year max. We understand you're not going to play next year. We're cool with that.
Yeah, I think someone's going to bite. Someone's definitely going to bite. I just I wonder who it's going to be, and that will be interesting, and this will be an incredibly interesting offseason, and we will be bringing you it's about to kick off. The finals are almost over. The draft is looming, and we will be bringing you a special report from our houses after watching the draft, not from the draft at all. And and also then free agency kicks in right then. Like, it's going to be great.
I'll go on record of saying this right now. The draft may be my favorite day of the NBA calendar. I love the draft. Because we always see a big trade, like, right in that, like, maybe it's not exactly that day, but maybe like a day before or during draft night, we always see a massive trade. And, man, I don't know. It always gets my juices flowing.
Well, speaking of potential trades, let's get right into our top 60 rehash from last year. If you listen to our last podcast, you know the rules. You know what we're about to do here. If you did not, go listen to the last podcast. You might have to skip ahead a little bit to get to the top 60, just like you'll have to do on this one. But we are looking at rankings for 8 category total values for all the players last year. And we are going through last year's top 60. And we are going to figure out basically what we thought about. We're going to talk about what we thought about them, how they performed, and what we expect from them next year. And in the last episode, we went through that top 15. Obviously, KD now, sadly, undraftable. But at number 16 is a potential draft night trade away from being in a completely different situation. This was the ever frustrating Anthony Davis. Number 16 in total value last year, ACAT. He only played 56 games, which is why, still surprisingly, by the way, 56 games played, still number 16 overall. Pretty freaking nuts. He might be on a new team next year. He might play with Zion next year. Either way, he's going to be Anthony Davis. Tyler, do you have anything to say about his season this year and what to expect next year?
I just want to know why Rich Paul hates the Pelicans.
Rich Paul is not good for the NBA, and I'll stand right on that. That guy's trash, and I'll probably never get a deal signed, or we'll never get any of his clients to talk about fantasy basketball on the podcast after saying that, and I'm okay with that because Rich Paul is trying to manipulate the entirety of the league using LeBron's blue chip value and the leverage of clutch sports, which still feels like LeBron can manipulate teams, players, salaries, and he owns an agency where he makes money off of it. Like, he's part owner of that. Like, I don't know. It feels a little like betting on baseball. Like, it's very suspicious. Rich Paul in the middle of all that. And I honestly think Rich Paul, I thought he ruined all the chances that Anthony Davis would go to the Lakers next year, and they're right back into talks about going to the Lakers.
Yeah, well, I mean, he came out, and I don't know if you saw this, he came out today and said that, he's not signing a deal with any team. He's just not going to do it. That
Boston would be a one and done.
Yeah, well, and he said any team. Right. And I guess the whole thing is he's trying to maybe leverage it so they take the Lakers offer, which is not that good, right?
Nope.
And then his two big clients get to play together. I mean, I don't really know what the end game here is, but his word is he's going to be a free agent in 2020, regardless of whichever team trades for him. So obviously that's going to hurt the Pelicans' chances of getting a massive deal. As far as fantasy stuff, though, I mean, Anthony Davis is a top 5 pick, regardless of what happens, unless he tears his Achilles, right?
Yeah.
I think he should be a top 5 pick. And, if he doesn't get traded by draft night, I guess maybe that clouds things a little bit because, towards the trade deadline, they might sit him out a little bit and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, there might be some weird shenanigans going on, right? But
regardless, he's still going to be a top 5 pick for me as long as he's healthy going into the season.
Overall, I'm not worried about it. And this is why if he doesn't get traded and there's some weird shenanigans, he's eventually going to get traded. I know the Pelicans organization is kind of weird, and they might actually be the one team that goes, well, screw everybody. If he wants to sit, go ahead and sit, and we're not going to trade you until the deadline, or we're not going to trade you at all, which would be pretty insane. But Anthony Davis per game last year was the number 1 player. The year before that, he was the number 1 player per game. And 2 years ago, or I guess, well, it would be at this point 3 seasons ago, he was number 2 overall per game. So this guy's a top 5 player. He's one of the few players next year who could be ranked the number 1 player in fantasy basketball. There's no reason to take him out of your top 5, maybe not even out of your top 3, unless you're worried about the situation.
I'm 100% behind you on that one.
Anthony Davis, kind of an obvious choice there to fit in your top 5, top 3. He is a 1A tier player. But most of the players coming up here, I have firmly in my second tier. Some of these guys new to the second tier. A lot of the players in the second and third tiers new to the second and third tiers, and that usually means a changing of the guard when it comes to fantasy basketball. Very hard to get into the second tier. And this next player, number 17, in total of value, is a player who finally kind of like took that leap that I think a lot of people saw coming. Rudy Gobert, he was the 17th ranked player, not half bad. He did play 81 games, so his total's pretty high for his total values. 81 games is a lot for really anyone in the league. We're talking about 16 points, 13 rebounds, one of those few elite rebound guys, and over 2 blocks a game with almost a steal, elite field goal percentage, and not the worst free throw percentage in the world. This guy we've had in our second, kind of in our second tier for I think a couple seasons now, Tyler. This is a guy we really like to fit a role. How did you like his season this year? What do you think he's going to do next year?
So, I mean, we saw this, right? In 2016, 2017, he finishes the 15th ranked player as far as total values go. And he got hurt in 2017, 2018, only played 56 games, and then he's back, right? So I think this is a really safe bet to kind of be in that second round. I think he's a second-round player. He's, like you mentioned it, one of the very few players that's going to give you elite rebounds and elite blocks, right? He's probably going to be top 5 in the NBA in both categories next season, as long as he's healthy. Yeah, I mean, I'm fine drafting Rudy Gobert. He's going to help you a ton in those 2 categories. He's not going to score a ton. And when you look at everybody pretty much being drafted around him, scoring 20 points a game, he's going to be one of maybe 2 or 3 players in the first 2 rounds that don't. So you're going to be a little bit behind in that category. He's the type of guy you can build a really strong team around, but you have to build a really strong team around him. Like, you can't just go, oh, I got Rudy Gobert, I'm great. I don't have to fill some gaps.
Yeah, he's not your number 1 go-to fantasy player. He's elite in 3 categories, like we've said. And he's not so deficient in other categories, especially free throw percentage, where you can't take him in a roto league. He doesn't get significantly hurt by those bad values in a roto league, unlike someone like Andre Drummond.
So here, this might be somewhat surprising to you. He shot much better than Andre Drummond this year, right?
Yeah.
But he also took more attempts than Drummond did. So as far as like we look at negative values, right? On Basketball Monster, Drummond's was negative 3.23. Gobert's was negative 3.13. So they were nearly identically bad in free throws this season.
Interesting.
Because Drummond took that nice leap up where he shot 59%, right? He had been plenty of those seasons where he was like in the 30s. So that's kind of something to maybe monitor going forward. That Gobert was actually very bad at free throws because he took a lot of attempts. I mean, 6.4 attempts a game is more than a lot of guys. I mean, that's the same amount Damian Lillard took, right? And we talk about Lillard always being kind of near the top in that free throw category.
That's true. I like Rudy Gobert here as a safe second-tier player. He's probably, my guess, going to be a very similar player next year. I don't see Utah drastically changing. Rudy Gobert is a very good traditional center, but in a league where in order to be actually an elite fantasy basketball player, you have to be an untraditional center, like someone like Cat Daddy, someone like Anthony Davis. I don't see Rudy Gobert suddenly being vaulted into anywhere near that first tier. The fact that he is a second tier player with being a traditional center, that's good news. And he's going directly into his prime right now. He is 27 years old. So I think all good signs for Rudy Gobert being a very stable player next year.
I'm with you. Probably a top 20 pick, but probably near the back of that top 20 in the 18, 19, 20 range.
Yeah, super safe. Speaking of a guy who's super safe, but like super safe for so long where you're like, when's this going to every year? He's kind of one of those guys like every year, like when's this guy going to fall off? When's this guy going to fall off? He's bound to fall off. And actually a few years ago, everyone wrote his obituary. And this is LaMarcus Aldridge, who has been carrying the Spurs 21 points a game last season, along with 9 rebounds, a little bit of a block, great free throw, great field goal, a very, very, very good roto player, an old school traditional big man with great percentages. So that's always solid. When you look at roto for head-to-head, probably a little less appealing for some of those players. But LaMarcus Aldridge is going to be 34 next year. How confident are you of another standard LaMarcus Aldridge year?
So LaMarcus Aldridge, I'm not going to bet against it at this point, right? He's 34. You mentioned it.
Yeah, it's hard to, yeah.
But here's what I'll say. He's either going to be a steal or he's going to be overdrafted. I'm going to read you his last 6 years in total value finish, right? So we'll start with last season, right? Okay. He was 18th. Okay. Then 21st. Then 61st, but he played 72 games.
Yeah,
so.
That was that weird year. Everyone kind of thought it wasn't going to work out in San Antonio, and everybody kind of gave up on him.
Yep. And then the year before that, 39th. Then he was 20th and 30th. So if he's going in that, 30-40 range, I think he's a great value. If he's going at 20, I really don't want him because there's no value in picking him there, right? He's not going to be better than 20th.
This feels like a pros versus Joes kind of discussion where if you're playing with a bunch of Joes, they hear LaMarcus Aldridge, they know the name, they see the rankings on whatever ranking thing they've looked at, they see what he was ranked last year, and they go, yeah, dude, this guy is top 20 pick, 100%. This guy's top 20 pick. If you're playing with the pros, they're gonna go, man, this guy's 34. I don't believe in him. I'm gonna look for some hot newness, and LaMarcus Aldridge will start to slip. I guarantee you there will be some slippage in LaMarcus Aldridge in those mock drafts when those expert mock drafts start coming out. And my guess is he's going to be like, the 26th best player next year. Like super boring, super standard, not an exciting player to draft, not an exciting player to own, but effective.
Right. And so, you gotta You got to play the market there a little bit, though, and try to get a little bit of value on that pick, because we know he can be the 20th best player, but he's never really going to be much more than the 20th best player.
That's true. This next player here, number 19, a new member, and actually kind of like I wouldn't say a shocking new member, because he was injured last season, and he was he was the second pick in the 2015 draft. He's only 23 years old, but he basically had his breakout season last year. This is really, really surprising to see him this high, but it is because he played 81 games, I think. D'Angelo Russell for the Brooklyn Nets. Absolutely stellar season, 21 points, 7 assists, and over a steal a game with 4 rebounds and almost 3 3-pointers a game. His per game values are not as exciting as his total values, but to see D'Angelo Russell as your number 19 player when you don't care about turnovers is a huge surprise to me, something I would never have guessed going into this season.
Yeah, right. And shout out to Kyle McEwen. He's been beating this drum that D'Angelo Russell was going too low the last, I don't know, pretty much ever since he came into the league, I think. So his rookie year, he played 80 games. He only played 63 and 48 the 2 years since. And then obviously this year he had played 81. And, he upped those assists, and he kind of really just hit his mark. He's still really young, right? I mean, he was only 22 this year, so he's only going to be 23 next year. I'm going to be a little scared off if he's a top 20 pick.
I think he's going to go around 20. Like, there's going to be a little bit more interest in the Embiids, Kyrie, some of those bigger names. If you're in a head-to-head league, Ben Simmons might jump some of those guys. But you're going to be looking at getting D'Angelo Russell at 18, 19, 20, 21, somewhere in that range. I would rather actually have D'Angelo Russell in the second tier, considering his leap, considering his age, if he stay, then some of these other kind of like sure bets, like LaMarcus Aldridge, I'm going to be one of those guys who lets LaMarcus Aldridge slip that I was just talking shit about. Unless D'Angelo Russell ends up being the second fiddle on the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah, right, and that's where there's a lot of, what I want to say. There's a lot of fungibility with this ranking, because obviously if Kyrie comes and the backcourt is D'Angelo Russell and Kyrie, like, I'm going to be a lot less interested in D'Angelo Russell. Would it be crazy if we saw D'Angelo Russell's best season ever this year?
I wouldn't say it's crazy, but I say it's doubtful. He's 23 years old.
Yeah, and that's going to be the narrative, and that's why I could see some people pushing him, right? Oh, he finished 19th. I could see some people pushing him up to that, like, 12, 13, 14 range. Like, I'm not there.
We could have a Donovan Mitchell situation on our hands where everybody assumed he was going to be like the 12th best player in the league. Let's just talk about D'Angelo Russell's ability to improve. Where's it going to come from? He shot 78% free throw, so perhaps a little bit of improvement there. 43% from the field, perhaps a little bit of improvement there. Maybe a little bit better in rebounds.
So I
don't see how he gets from second tier to first tier.
I'll say this about the field goal, right? That was a big improvement, right? He was 41.6, 40.5, and then 41 his first 3 years. So even getting it up to 43.5 was a giant leap, right? So there's that. He already kind of took that leap.
That is an outlier, right, in his career right now.
Here's where it could happen, right? He only played 30.2 minutes a game. He's never played a ton. This first year in Brooklyn, he only played 25.7 minutes a game. The 2 years in LA, he played 28.7 and 28.2. Like, he's never played a ton of minutes. Now, if he could get his way to 32, 33 minutes, obviously that could be another boost to his fantasy value. So I guess what I'm saying is, if he's like at pick 20 or a little bit after that, I'm going to be somewhat interested. If he's in the top 15, it's going to be a hard pass for me on D'Angelo Russell.
Yeah, and you also have to look at the 81 games. His per game number. I mean, he improved throughout the year. So like some of those early games were not kind to D'Angelo, but his per game value is not as good as his total value. So just do pay a little bit attention to that, because the next guy has a very, very similar stats, and I think is a safer pick than D'Angelo Russell in the second tier. And that's Drew Holiday. 21 points, 7.5 assists, 1.5 steals, so better steals, better shooting percentages, or better field goal. Still kind of free throw, about as good, a little bit worse than D'Angelo Russell. Hits less threes, but gets a rebound more than D'Angelo Russell. And if I had to put, if I comes draft day and it's the middle of the second round, and I see Drew Holiday and I see D'Angelo Russell, I'm gonna go with Drew Holiday, because Drew Holiday has done it over and over and over again.
Yeah, fact. I'm with you 100% there. Is it better for Drew Holiday's fantasy value next year if Anthony Davis is on the Pelicans and Drew Holiday's on the Pelicans, or if Anthony Davis is on a different team and Drew Holiday's on the Pelicans?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Because I think it's better for Drew Holiday personally as like an NBA player to play with Anthony Davis, just like I think it's probably better for any NBA player to play with Anthony Davis. But that does mean that Drew Holiday is now pound the ball, take all the shots, bigger utilization, bigger usage on the Pelicans, and that might hurt his percentage, but that would increase his counting stats. He's already playing 36 minutes a game, though, so I don't know how much more that usage is going to bump up Drew Holiday's value. He's probably a little bit more value with Anthony Davis off the team.
So here's an interesting way to look at this, right? So Anthony Davis was relatively healthy in 2017, 2018, correct?
Yeah.
Drew Holiday shot 49.5% from the field. This year, Anthony Davis missed quite a few games, and Drew Holiday shot 47.2% from the field. So I think this could be a situation where, and now that they're going to have Zion Williamson, right? So there's that part of it too, that we're not really looking at here. But I think it could be a situation where even if Drew Holiday takes a step up, like in points, and maybe he gets a couple more rebounds, and maybe he's got the ball in his hand, so he gets a few more assists, I think he's going to lose some, field goal percentage, maybe lose some of those defensive stats a little bit, having to expend more energy on the offensive end, and we kind of see everything come out in the wash for Drew Holiday. Like some categories go up, some go down. At the end of the day, the fantasy values are relatively the same.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair assessment. I feel really safe drafting Drew Holiday if I need a point guard, if I want to build that kind of build in my head-to-head league in that second round.
And I think you nailed it. I would definitely rather have him than D'Angelo Russell next year in a redraft league. Just feel a lot of safety with Drew Holiday. I feel like he's pretty locked in.
D'Angelo Russell is going to be the new hotness. And right now, that season's an outlier. Andrew Holiday has a few seasons under his belt being this type of player. So we kind of like to revert to the mean here, and the mean looks better for Drew Holiday than it does D'Angelo Russell, even though Russell finished one spot ahead, very, very slightly ahead of Drew Holiday. Drew Holiday popping in at number 20. Let's go to number 21, a very interesting number 21, Kawhi Leonard. Everybody knows Kawhi Leonard's status. Well, I guess I don't know how hurt he is right now, but I think everybody knows the story. Him in Toronto obviously led him to the finals, and perhaps by the time you listen to this podcast, has won the NBA Finals. Who knows? But only played 60 games this season. So finished number 21, even though only playing a measly 60 games, which means still Anthony Davis a better per game value. But that also means Kawhi Leonard, when it comes to quality starts, especially if you're in a roto league, which is about quality starts, a top 5 player per game. So going into next year, Kawhi's could be in a completely new situation. Chances are he's in a completely new situation. We don't know if he's going to have the same games limits, restrictions limit, back-to-back limit. We don't know really anything going on because he's like the weirdest dude in the history of the NBA. He's weirder than like Dennis Rodman being a freaking marrying himself. Like, he's just weird, man. He's a weirdo. He's like a robot android man with no emotions and feelings, and he might like popsicles and carameled apples. I don't know what he likes, man. It's weird. I don't know anything about him.
Did you see the question where the reporter asked him why he passed the ball at the end of Game 5?
I did not.
Oh man, so you guys could probably find this. Google it. It's hilarious because like I can never get a read on his face, right? Like most people when they're like telling a joke, like their face kind of breaks a little bit.
They're
like
giving it away usually,
right? Well, on purpose though, for most people, right? Like they want
joke.
you to be like, yeah, haha, that's funny. He's just so deadpan all the time. But like he answers questions, and I actually really enjoy listening to his like press conferences because he's so deadpan. He answers questions, and you're like, was he kidding or was he serious?
Yeah, people don't know what to do with him, and I don't know what to do with him next year because he's absolutely could be one of the best players in the league. He's a top tier roto player.
I'll say this: he may be the most interesting fantasy player for me.
Now he was, but I think he might have been that for you going into this year too.
Because so let's throw out the 9-game season in 2017-2018. Okay, what did you say he finished per game this season? Did you look that up?
I'm looking at it. I'm looking at a 9-cat per game, and he is 5th.
Okay, so 8-cat, 9-cat, it doesn't really matter. The 3 seasons before 2017-2018, he only played 9 games in 2017-2018. He was hurt. He was a top 10 player in 8-cat or 9-cat, doesn't matter. Per game, he was a top 10 player every one of those seasons. He went, and he made a big thing of talking about this, that he thinks the only reason he's playing right now in the finals is that Toronto let him sit all those games.
And he might not be wrong. I know there's no real, I know there's some scientific evidence that when you play tired, you're more likely to get hurt. If you play hurt, you're definitely more likely to get hurt, as Kevin Durant. Those things are true, but it's hard to quantify every, just kind of like a blanket statement for every single human being that let's narrow that down to every single NBA athlete, that because he only played 60 games, he is not injured right now. Maybe he's playing better right now. I would believe that than he would have. He'd be less tired. That makes a lot of sense. But is he not injured because of those 60 games? I don't know if there's really a metric for that. I don't know if you can scientifically prove that. It's just more like probabilities. Probably you'll be better. Probably you'll get hurt less overall. So is this the future of all NBA players? Is this just Kawhi's future?
Well, let's look at it just from Kawhi's perspective, right? Because I don't know if you saw when Kevin Durant tore his Achilles, right? That Mark Cuban put out a thing on Twitter that basically the league and the teams have to invest more money in, looking at advancements in medicine to figure out when is this, tendon, whether it's Achilles or ACL, when is it more likely to rupture or break or tear? And so there's a lot of advancements in medicine maybe we can make too that can help this. So we won't even dive into all that business. But I also think the Kawhi thing, part of him sitting out is in his own mind, right? He's more confident and a happier person, right? You got to remember, these are people. If he sits out the games, right? The whole reason I think he didn't play for the Spurs in the playoffs when he was probably healthy enough to play was he was pissed they wouldn't let him do what he wanted to do. So, it could be a whole thing just in his mind, and the team that signs him, maybe that's part of his deal, is that, he's only going to play 60 or 65 games because that's where Kawhi wants to do. That's a very real possibility. And so, when we're looking at this guy for fantasy, right, in a head-to-head league, I think it's going to be very, very hard to, I think 65 right now for me is the high watermark. Like, I don't think I can say Kawhi Leonard's going to play any more than 65 games next season. So,
wow. All right, is that a bold? I don't even know if that's a bold statement. I think
okay. So here's where I kind of
bold prediction.
Came up with that number, and you can say it's bullshit, whatever. Like, that's your prerogative. I'll read you his games played. Starting with this season, right? 60, he had 9, he was hurt, whatever. 74, 72. That was when, though, he was kind of getting a little chirpy, right? The rest of his career, 64, 66, 58, 64. So, I don't think 65 is that crazy when you read those numbers, right? So therefore, what is 65 games of Kawhi Leonard when you could say that, you're going to get 75 to 78 games from the rest of the players? So, that makes it hard. I mean, I still think I'm probably looking at him in that, 10 to 15 range somewhere.
Yeah, that makes it really, really, really hard to kind of quantify what I want to do with him next year. So let's say this is who Kawhi's going to be, and maybe he plays a few more games than he did this year. He's an elite player. Per game, he is a top tier player. Totals, he's a solid second tier player. Trying to find that in between, would you put him in the top half of your second tier?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know.
And I'm going to have to really think hard about this in this sense, right? Like, so you mentioned it, right? The games I'm going to get are going to be really, really good. They're going to be at the elite level, right? So here's where I'm looking at this, and maybe this is an important distinction to make for the listeners, right? If the league is 12 people or 10 people, I'm more likely to take Kawhi at like 10, 11, because I'm going to have someone halfway decent to fill in when Kawhi's sitting out doing his thing, right?
Yeah.
If the league's 15 or 20 people, I'm probably not taking Kawhi until – I'm probably not going to have Kawhi. Let's put it that way. Somebody else probably going to take Kawhi.
Someone's going to snag him up on that turn. I think if I could predict anything, a lot of people will still be taking him on the turn. And I think I would only take him on the turn in a
very shallow
league or a roto league.
Right? Like, some roto you're going to get that. But even in a deep roto.
Yeah, then it becomes I don't know.
If it's a deep roto with a small bench.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not – so, like, you can have a deep league, and people sometimes don't understand this, right? Like, I'm talking – you could have a deep league by creating extra bench spots, right? Like 200 or 300 people could be drafted, but they're all on someone's bench. You know what I mean? So in that kind of league, you'd be fine taking Kawhi. If it's a deep league because there's a bunch of teams and there's a small bench, taking Kawhi, even in a roto league at like 10, 11, 12, is going to be really difficult because the 20 games he's going to miss – you're going to have to replace that with somebody who's not very good.
That's true. Yeah, I think it's a good synopsis for Kawhi. He's going to be weird next year. Expect him to be weird next year. We'll have to get more into that when we figure out where he's actually going to end up. So let's go on to the next guy, number 22, a guy who took a little bit of a leap as well this year. Was on the up for the Clippers, got traded to Philly. Tobias Harris, number 22, 20 points a game. Solid 2 threes, 8 rebounds, and half a steal, half a block. Those are the types of guys that we like. He's a all-around solid player, another very, very good roto player. Tobias Harris played 82 games, so he's not the his total value is a little bumped from what his per game value is, but still really, really solid per game value player.
3 years in a row, 82, 80, 82.
Yeah, he's super consistent, very healthy, and is going to be 27 next year, so right in the dead center of his prime. I feel very confident in Tobias Harris being very, very similar to this season as he was this season for next season.
Yeah, and we could even see more, right? He's a free agent as well.
Yeah,
we don't really know where he's going to be at.
Kind of depends on where he goes, but on that team full of, in Philadelphia with all those mouths to feed, he still carved his own. Like, he was still a really, really solid player.
Well, and I'll say this about the Philadelphia thing, right? Like, they did have 4 kind of studs at the end of the season, but they had nothing else. Like, their bench was very, 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 very weak. So that meant lots of shots for the 4 guys. I'm fine with taking Tobias Harris. I'll probably have him more in my 3rd round. Like, I can just see a couple guys maybe below him. I'm willing to bounce up here, right? Looking at the 22nd ranked player. I'll probably, in a 12-team league, I'll probably have him more like, 25, 26, maybe 30, just depending.
I don't know if I have him as low as you do. Maybe kind of near the bottom of that second tier, but I do play in a lot more roto leagues than you, so that could be why. I think that's fair. I think that's a fair rating. But the next guy on this list is also from Philadelphia, Ben Simmons. Not a roto player that you want to have, especially if you're playing turnovers as well. But a great player to build around in a head-to-head league, a lot different of a player, and he is in total values without taking into account turnovers in ACAT leagues, murdering you in free throws, but 9 rebounds, 8 assists, stealing a half a game, almost a block, 17 points. Ben Simmons next season, like his future's kind of up in the air as well, whether maybe Philly would be interested in trading him. But as a fantasy player, I don't know where he goes from here. Like, he's still not shooting threes. He's still not trying to shoot threes. I think he did try to shoot a 3 here or there, but that's what's keeping him firmly kind of here at the end of the second tier.
Yeah, and I think, if you're in the type of league where you're going to punt maybe threes, right? He's pretty negative value in those too. Or you're going to punt free throws. He obviously takes a little bit of a jump. You mentioned it in roto leagues. He's very hard to draft because he's one of the highest negative free throw values of anybody. But even if they trade him, even if he becomes the guy on a team, like, I don't really see much different happening, right? Like, he gets a lot of value from grabbing you a ton of rebounds and getting a ton of assists with some good steals, with some good blocks. I think those are going to happen pretty much anywhere Ben Simmons would go. I feel good about drafting Ben Simmons in a head-to-head league in this range. You know what I mean? In that second round, I feel fine drafting him. I know I'm going to have to build my team around him. I'm aware of that, but I'm 100% fine with it.
And I think you're getting ahead of ourselves being like, oh, Ben Simmons could be on another team next year. And I think that's just because the NBA has gotten real crazy lately. And, the most likely scenario is that he's in Philly. Like, that they're just going to ride that out. I'll be interested to see what happens. I'm going to be keeping an eye on that. But, Ben Simmons, I think, is going to be – I mean, he's young, so, like, there could be room for improvement here. He could become a bigger scoring go-to usage guy if he's on a different team. But I'm not doing anything weird with him. As a roto player, I do avoid him here at the end of the second tier. But the fact that he is a second tier,
and here's
player that's pretty good for being a negative in threes and in free throws.
Here's a little something to watch for Ben Simmons. 56% free throws in his first season. He got that up to 59.9, so almost 60. He can keep making kind of steady improvements in that free throw shooting. Eventually that negative value goes away a little bit. So, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but you mentioned it, right? He's going to be 23 years old next season. If we see another, he gets it up to 64% next year, he's slowly eroding that negative value away.
That's true. I don't see him going down in value anytime soon. Another young player here in the next spot, number 24.
So this is a super interesting guy because a lot of people assume he's a very, very young player because he doesn't have that much experience.
Yeah.
He's not that young.
You're right. He's 26.
Right. So, people, assume because Buddy Hield, that was, his third year. He was one of those guys who stuck around college and played all 4 years. So he's not a 20. He wasn't not a 19-year-old kid when he came out.
You got to watch out for that. I got tricked up, but he's heading into his prime then, and that makes sense for him taking this big leap to number 24. He did play 82 games. This is why he's at number 24. Shout out to Buddy Hield though, huge season for him.
Yeah, and he did up pretty much everything, right? He became a 20-point per game scorer. He is one of the best 3-point shooters in the NBA as far as just raw makes and as far as percentage. I'll say this though, he's a guy I'm a little scared about in the sense that I don't know where he gets a ton better next year.
He's like a broke ass Bradley Beal. He's really, really a very, very good shooter, but I don't think he ever takes the leap in assists and steals. The 0.4 blocks is really, really nice, but I don't see how he, especially on the Kings, gets any better than he is right now, which, by the way, is very, very good. And Buddy Hield, Sacramento Kings, often means completely underrated and overlooked in a draft.
Yeah, I mean, like if he's going at 40, I'm jumping on.
Great for you.
If he's going in the second round, though, I might find somebody I like a little bit better. I don't really think he's going to get any better. And here's the thing I don't like. You mentioned it, like adding his steals and blocks together, he's at 1.1.
Yeah, not a huge fan of that. I don't know where. I mean, that's not going to get better. Like that's been pretty steady. Looking at his career stats,
that was one of the things when he got drafted too, right? Was like he's not going to be a great defensive player. Like it was just one of the knocks, and it's held true. His teammate is the next guy, De'Aaron Fox. I'd much rather have him in a draft than Buddy Hield.
I agree. De'Aaron Fox coming at number 25. De'Aaron Fox is a young cat. He's only 21 and a half years old right now. And had a very, very good year, but also played a ton of games, 81 games, getting him up to the 25 spot, much better in totals than he was per game value. It does hurt you a bit in turnovers, but you did see him head in the right direction this season. Over 7 assists a game, over a steal and a half a game. Became kind of a go-to point guard in this league. Like, is going to be a very solid, kind of like second-tier point guard when you're looking for point guards this coming draft, I think.
Assuming you're having the draft right this second. Okay, so you don't get to know where he ends up.
Okay.
Would you rather have young point guard D'Angelo Russell or young point guard De'Aaron Fox?
Knowing what I know now, Russell or Fox? Man, that's pretty tough because for some reason I'm leaning towards D'Angelo Russell. Hits more threes. Feels like he's on kind of like a team on the upswing. I know the Kings were a team on the upswing too, but
I mean,
the Nets feel a little bit better, and the 30 minutes per game give me for D'Angelo Russell. I give him the edge.
But right now you made the assumption he's on the Nets. If they sign Kyrie Irving and they decide to use that cap space elsewhere to sign somebody else, D'Angelo Russell could be on a.
Well, no, D'Angelo Russell is signed with the Nets, I believe.
No, D'Angelo Russell is a restricted free agent.
Ah, you're right. So if they let his restricted free agency rights go,
and if they're going to sign two max deals, Russell will not be back.
No, but I actually like that. I like that for the usage. That's fine with me.
Yeah, and I mean that could be good, and it could be bad, right? In the sense that he could see that efficiency dip back to that 41% if he's the kind of go-to guy on a team. I'll say I think I want De'Aaron Fox. I could see Fox taking scoring a few more points, getting a few more minutes, dishing out a few more assists, kind of slowly becoming an elite steals guy. I'm a big fan of De'Aaron Fox.
I also like De'Aaron Fox. I think he's going to be overlooked in next year's draft, along with Buddy Hield, and along with the next player, number 26. I actually think this player gets overlooked almost every single year,
except for this year, right? It was the
except
first.
for this year. This is the first year he got his respect, right?
He got his due finally. It took him going to the Spurs to get his due.
DeMar DeRozan. A lot of people were like, "Oh, going into Pop's system," and including myself. He's gonna be really good for him, and I think it was. It was really good for him. This dude, he has gotten slightly better every single year, just like a little bit better here, a little bit better there, and that's exactly what you want to see from your NBA players. The only problem here is going to Pop's system. Pop was like, "Stop shooting threes. You're not good at them. Stop shooting threes." Now, this made him a better. This popped his rebounds up, his assists up. Though some of those assists were due to injuries in the point guard area for the Spurs. But DeMar DeRozan had a fantastic season, and he's a solid third-tier player. Like he's going to be a solid third-tier player next year.
Yeah, I'm with you. DeJounte Murray should be back.
Yeah.
So we could see the assists go down a little bit. We could see the minutes go down a little bit. So that's something to watch out for, right? Like if you're picking him in the second round, that might be a little bit of overkill, right? I mean, we know what DeRozan is now. He's going to be 30 years old. He has produced second round value exactly one time, and that was this season. So if you're picking him in the second round, I'd probably not do that.
Yeah, I would not do that anyway. Just, he's not overlooked now. He used to be picked in the 50s all the time, and he'd always play better than that almost every single year. Well, now he's considered a premier fantasy player. And
here's the numbers if you want them, right? So the last however many seasons here will go. He was 26th in 8 category rankings this season, so he wasn't a second-round player. I misspoke there. 25, 37, 31. He had 101 season because he only played 60 games, and then 35. So if you're betting on him being 30 to 35 or 25 to 35, that seems like a pretty damn safe bet.
I agree. Next guy on this list will be the hottest name in your draft next year, Pascal Siakam. Voted our best waiver wire player, most improved player, probably a bunch of other awards that we voted on. I don't remember them all, but you should go listen to that podcast. A very good podcast that we did for our award season. Pascal Siakam being in the finals right now, having some incredible games during this run for the Raptors, and potentially, like I said, could be an NBA champion by the time you listen to this. Played 80 games this year, took a huge leap, and he will be easily pegged in the second round of almost every draft next year. I almost guarantee it.
Yeah, now I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid if that's the case, because he played 80 games. That's difficult to do. We talk about that all the time. He's an Otto Porter type in the sense that he does a lot of things good. Okay.
He's bad at really nothing.
Right. And so we see, little slips, right? Maybe he plays 75 games instead of 80. Maybe he does this, and
maybe his steals slip a little bit. Maybe his shooting percentage slips a little bit.
And Siakam should get a lot better. He's 25 years old, but he's a player who came to basketball late. So, I think that's why we're seeing kind of this rapid growth. But if you're going to peg him as a second-round player, we talk about how hard it is to move up, even one spot when you get up there near the top, right? So I think a lot of things went right for Pascal this year, and I'm not going to bet on him taking, the step into the top 20. Like some guys, that's not going to be me.
Name one player in your second tier that's not elite at anything, at any category. I don't have there. To me, there isn't one.
That's my point, right? Like I don't think Siakam's going to score 20 a game. So there's that. There's that knock as far as second tier. And the guys who don't are guys like Rudy Gobert and Andre Drummond, guys who are going to get me huge rebounds. They're going to get me blocks. They're going to get me steals. They're going to get me this. And I don't think Siakam's going to do that. And the whole less than a steal, less than a block thing, I don't love that, right? He's getting a ton of value from
shooting really good percentages. And I think in a head-to-head league, that's never the best strategy to go with, because those percentages are very, variable week to week. And so you can have a really good percentage team and still lose a lot of weeks just by, 1 week Pascal Siakam shot 65%, but then the other week he shot 45.
Yeah. I mean, your best, if you want to say Kawhi Leonard is your best non-elite player, I disagree with you. I think almost 2 steals a game is pretty elite. 26 points is pretty elite. So you're probably talking about your Tobias Harris, DeMar DeRozan, and Pascal Siakam. And those guys are kind of into second tier, beginning in the third tier, maybe even solid third tier for DeMar DeRozan. And Pascal Siakam doesn't seem to have the game to take that leap into a solid second round or a really good second tier player, let alone an elite player. So I think the hype's going to be high on Pascal Siakam, and I don't think he's going to fall to where I want to draft him, which would probably be somewhere in that mid third round, probably right around this 30 spot here. The next player on this list, number 28, Klay Thompson, could be on a new team next year, but Klay does what Klay does. This is what Klay does. He hits threes, he scores points, and he's a solid defender. Like he shoots good percentages. This is it. Like I just don't know, outside of Klay going to a team where he's the number one primary ball handler, point forward, whatever you want to call him, which I don't even think those are not his skills. So like I don't think that's going to be anything but a little bit of a bump. Unless he's the number one option, I don't see Klay doing anything spectacularly different than he did this year.
Yeah, no, I think we could see him take, if anything, I think he takes a small jump up because there's not going to be Kevin Durant next year.
Yeah, I think that's it. Like he'll get the ball more, he'll score more. He'll be more like those pre-Kevin Durant days.
Right, and he might, grab a rebound or so more here or there, just one less guy there getting a few rebounds.
Yeah, I mean those pre-Kevin Durant days, he was scoring up in those, the mid, the 22, 21. So it's actually really not that crazy of a jump.
He was a top 20 player 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
So
there's
good. That. If you're asking me Pascal Siakam or DeMar DeRozan or Klay Thompson, give me Klay Thompson next year.
Klay Thompson's going to be great. He's elite at three-pointers, and that's huge in a league where you have to shoot three-pointers, and Pascal Siakam hits 1, DeMar DeRozan hits basically 0. So you're already playing from behind in a certain specific category, and you're barely out of the second round, maybe barely into the third round, and you're already playing from behind in a category. Unless you're building your head-to-head league punt strategy around that, not the best move to be punting. I mean, actually, I don't know. I would like to look into that a little bit more. Punting threes when everybody hits threes might be an interesting strategy, but it's hard because everybody hits threes. It's hard to punt.
We talked about this actually. Punting threes in a head-to-head league can be easy, and you can still win some weeks because you look at punting threes, right? Guys like Klay Thompson take a big hit in your ratings because he's threes are one of his best categories, but it also bumps up some guys who do the other categories well, but also hit some threes, but they're not elite at that category. So
Yeah.
and having a couple guys who hit 2 threes a game, you're eventually going to have to draft them, right? Like, all the best players hit threes for the most part. Like, you're going to have some threes on your team. So you're probably not going to be the absolute worst team in threes. And in a head-to-head league, we talk about that kind of all the time, that it can be a good way to set yourself apart and be really elite in 4, 5, or 6 categories, which is all you got to do to win every matchup, right? Like, if it's an 8-category league and you're elite in 5 categories, you win every week 5-3.
Yeah, I think maybe we should do a punt category series, maybe talk about specific punt strategies or players that fit punt strategies. If you guys want to hear that, all you listeners out there who are listening in the middle of the summer, God bless you all. Find Tyler at Tyler P. Watts, tweet at me at Watch the Boxes. We'd be interested in your feedback on what you want to hear this year. But let's knock out these last 2 players. And these last 2 players are kind of like the beginning of like that kind of like, Are we in the plateau yet? Or are we still in the third tier? Is it the end of the third tier? We're talking about Eric Bledsoe, and I think a player that will surprise a lot of people who only paid attention to the beginning of last season. Donovan Mitchell played his way into the top 30 via totals without counting turnovers. And that still, every time I see Donovan Mitchell this high, even though I know he's number 30, still surprises me.
Yeah. So we talk about Bledsoe. Bledsoe should be no surprise.
Yeah. He's a great fantasy player and not that great of an NBA player. Ugh.
Right. So his last 4 seasons where he played more than 60 games, which is, 4 out of the last 5 years, he was 20, 36, 13, and then obviously last season 29th. He's just a real safe bet to be a top 30 player, if you ask me.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably one of his better years, 78 games. He only played 29 minutes a game, so he does the right things. He's like your I didn't get an elite guard. I need someone who does assists and steals. Oh, Eric Bledsoe. Great. Done.
Right. And I don't really have that much to say about him. Like, we're pretty much where he finished is about where I'm picking him. You know what I mean? Like, he's a top 30 guy. If he slips into the 40s, 50s, I'm interested.
Yeah, I think we liked him a lot because he was slipping quite a bit last year.
Right. Well, a lot of people knocked him because, they Giannis and Middleton thing and this and that. Like, he's really good at fantasy. What you think about him, that's up to you. So the 2 seasons for Donovan Mitchell, we said he couldn't get any better, right? He finished 27th in totals his first year. He didn't get any better. He finished 30th. I think he's kind of in the same boat. I think he's going to be in just like Eric Bledsoe in the sense that he's going to be right around 30th next year.
Yeah, we said, where is he going to improve? A lot of people are like, man, he was a rookie, dude. Wait till he starts playing for real. And it's like, basically at the beginning of the season, they started starting Donovan Mitchell a few games into the season, and he played almost 33 and a half minutes a game last year. He played 34 minutes a game this year and did improve slightly, a little bit, but pretty much had a Donovan Mitchell season. And when you look at that per game, especially when you look at that per game, when you're looking at 9 categories, he's fine. He's kind of a mid-tier plateau type player. But when you add all that up over the course of the season, 77 games that he played, it adds up and it does really well in your head-to-head leagues. He's a very good player down.
Yeah, but if this is another guy though. Like, he's going to be 23 next year. If people are going, oh, I'm drafting him at 20. Oh, okay, he's yours. Enjoy him.
Sure, but I actually think there's going to be the weird reverse backlash. A lot of people drafted him at 12, 13, 14 last year and just bombed the first half, and they're like, well, screw this guy. I'll never draft him again. So I think a lot of people are going to be passing on Donovan Mitchell because I don't think he was supposed to be, it's just kind of one of those expectation things. He was supposed to be the 15th, 14th best player, and he even ended up at 30. So even looking at it after the fact, you're gonna be like, the 30 is not that good of a player. Well, I think he's gonna be overlooked. He might even start dropping to 40 and 50, and that's far too low, I think. Once you get into that,
that's my range, right? Like, I think he's gonna be right around 30. So if he's going after
that's
30,
far too low.
You know what I mean? I'm gonna be interested. If he's even sitting there 35, I'll probably be like, "Ooh, Donovan Mitchell, that's my man."
Yeah, I just don't see how he has a worse season than last season.
So who would you rather have? If you can have Bledsoe or you can have Mitchell?
Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah, me too. Just feel a little bit better about the health history there. Feel a little bit better about
he's younger.
I
like the idea of him improving a little bit. I guess if I'm in a 9-cat or a roto, I might lean towards Eric Bledsoe because of his good field goal percentages and his less turnovers, right? But I think they're both kind of sitting around the same spots, and I think they're both kind of similar attitudes for fantasy basketball. Weirdly, I think they'll be ranked fairly similar next year, and that could go either way. I don't know what these alleged experts are going to be ranking these players, but I will be looking forward to the easily the best. In fact, scientifically proven the best rankings over the last few years on #basketball.com.
I could see some teams next year where my 4th and 5th round picks are Donovan Mitchell and Eric Bledsoe.
That would be nice. That would be those would be some nice pickups if you went big early.
I can see that happening. You're right about that. I could see that. Could be my future self could be very happy about that.
Yeah, we're going to knock out the rest of this top 60 as the summer goes along. We hope you are enjoying your summer. We hope you are enjoying the finals. And the NBA season never sleeps, neither does the fantasy season. So if you are looking for advice for your keeper leagues, for whatever you got going on, you want to start a league, you're interested in rules, dynasty rules, keeper rules, whatever, you can find us at Watch the Boxes. You can find Tyler at Tyler P. Watts. And we're happy to do a mailbag, answer any questions, focus on any topics the listener wants. We want to basically cater to you guys. You're the guys and girls who are listening to this podcast. And if you really, really want to support the show, go check out patreon.com/watchingtheboxes. We will catch you all next time. Thank you. Have a good night.